welcome to the bridge, and let me start just right in. And 2 years have passed since 2020. You won the election with almost 5,000 votes. Halfway through your term as mayor of Braintree, how do you feel about this job? Is it super busy or kind of easy?
Well, I'll tell you, it's definitely not. It's not a quiet day in town hall. It's very busy. It is a job that requires really round-the-clock work. Things can happen in the middle of the night that you have to attend to. So it really is. It's very busy, but when you love what you're doing, it's not work. So, I really enjoy representing the community. I enjoy the work that I'm doing. And for me, it's very important to be able to do things to better the community that I grew up in. So it certainly is a lot of work. And, it's funny because before I became mayor, I remember talking to the previous mayor and saying to him, thinking that the job wasn't as busy as it is. And sometimes I'd give him a hard time, if there was a holiday or something. And then when I took over, I called him up and said, I am sorry, you were 100% right. This is a very, very busy job that really, it takes up all the time that you have. And it's important that, to me, and it was important to him, that we spend our time making sure that we take care of all of the people of Braintree and the town as a whole.
Do you find a great team to support you with all the stuff?
Yeah, I'll tell you, from the beginning, obviously there was a lot of things going on. We had a lot of things going on. One of the first things we did was we had to find the funding to build a new school. And that was quite a task, and I made my way through each and every school building in the town and looked at the buildings from boiler room to roof to see the condition they were in. And it drove me to put together a tax debt exclusion, which basically would create additional taxes, had to be voted on by the voters of Braintree. It passed overwhelmingly, but one of the things that was in it was to build this new school, South Middle School, as well as to do a bunch of repairs that I found along the way that we would not be able to afford to do. So my team has been tremendous from day one. We work extremely well together, and I'm very fortunate to have them.
And changing from the council vice president to the owner of mayor's office, what is the biggest difference, from day-to-day operations, or any interesting changes?
Well, my previous life, before being mayor, I was the owner and operator of Braintree Cleaners, and I was a member of the town council at the time. I was the vice president. I've served as the president and served on many different boards in the community. And during that period of time, it was much different. I had a business to run, but I also had the government side, which, legislatively, my job specifically, I was a district councilor, but specifically as a legislator, there are certain responsibilities that we had. So to go to the executive office was much different, as well as to walk away from my business, and my wife took over the business. So yeah, she's wonderful. So the day-to-day operations of running a business and being a counselor were far different than being mayor. And it was interesting because the store became a meeting place for residents to come in and ask questions, even if they didn't have business to do at the store. So it really gave me a good indication as to, what the expectations of the residents were. And it helped me when I became mayor to understand many of the issues throughout town.
That's an amazing experience. As you said, you are the founder of Braintree Cleaners, and you have operated a small business for over 20 years. Do you agree that Braintree is one of the best places in Massachusetts for startups and corporate locations? What is the advantage in your mind?
Well, I'll tell you first of all, so I think we just had 30 years last year, and it was my wife and I that started it. And, it's funny because when we decided that we were going to buy a house, we ended up buying the house that I grew up in. And my wife said to me, why do we have to only look in Braintree? Why can't we look anywhere else? And I looked at her and I said, because there's nowhere else to live.
Where did you like the other options?
We only looked in Braintree. We never looked anywhere else. And she, my wife originally lived in Quincy, and we call that North Braintree because it used to be part of Braintree. So my wife, was asking me, why do we only have to look in Braintree? And, we don't even look back now because it was the greatest, she knows it's the greatest decision that we made. But growing up here, I just understood how great the community was, how much it had to offer. And that's why we opened Braintree Cleaners in Braintree, because, there was nowhere else that I wanted to be and that we wanted to be. So, there's so many advantages to having a business in Braintree. We have, a number of people that make their way through our community every day. We have a number of great opportunities here in Braintree. We have wonderful, inexpensive electricity because we have our own electric department. We have our own water department. We have so many advantages that other communities don't have for business owners. So that itself was a piece of it, but also just my love for the community and knowing how great the people are here and wanting to service them. So
Braintree, as you mentioned before, from farm town to factory town, then to retail town. So what's your next step or vision for this general position of Braintree in this town?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of changes occurred. At this point, what we have done, what my team has done with me, is we've put together, for example, we have a life science committee that I gather, and it's made up of staff members to help facilitate life science and biotech to come to Braintree. So there's a number of different companies that you'll see in places like Watertown and Cambridge, where you take technology and they basically do things like grow. They could be growing skin. They could be doing. There's many different things that help us in the health industry and as well as pharmaceutical industry. But there's a number of different things that they're able to do that bring us, into the future and help really help the lives of individuals. There was one company that we had talked to. There was a few companies that had come through that. There was one particular location that we're working on now that we think we're pretty close to actually having life science there. Mm-hmm. And those industries just make our lives better by creating ways of curing diseases and finding ways of helping physically make people's lives better. So the goal right now is to move into that direction. So, we really need to get one or two companies to come and then the rest will follow. So we have a number of locations and a number of folks that we've been dealing with through the state to try to promote and bring those businesses to Braintree.
We are a bilingual channel facing the Asian community. And do you have plans for the next 2 years to attract a new business, especially for Chinese American companies?
Yes. I think that when you look at our population, in 2010, we were at approximately 7.5% of our community was Asian, and now we're over 17%. So that growth is going to continue. And I think it's imperative that not only do we attract Chinese American, Vietnamese American businesses to our community, but also we need to have better communication with our residents that don't necessarily speak English as a first language and have the ability to, be able to communicate and answer questions.
Yeah, I know that you recorded the Chinese Spring Festival greeting video in your office in February, and many Chinese followers of BARTV's channel love that very much. So do you have any experience collaborating with immigrant groups?
Yeah, I mean, my history, my dad was originally from Greece, and, so I truly understand what it's like to be first-generation American, and, obviously understand the struggles that my family had faced coming to America and not being able to speak English. And some of my relatives still, do not speak English, and so I respect that, and I understand it. And what we need to do is to make it as easy as we can for communication for anyone that comes here, no matter what language they speak. So I think that it's really important for me as a first-generation American on my dad's side. I'm with folks in the Asian community and understand that, there's a lot of cultural things that we have in the Greek community that the Asian community has, and I think that it's really important to enlighten and educate everyone so that we all understand each other and make it so much easier for folks to be here in Braintree. But my commitment as mayor is absolutely 100% to making a completely inclusive community and to making sure that anybody that comes here feels not only comfortable and accepted, but also give them the opportunity to have questions, answers, and have resources available to make sure that there isn't a lack of communication.
I heard about a story about the Charlie's Bar. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so really it's interesting. I was named, in the Greek tradition, the first son is named after your grandfather, your papu. So my brother George is the oldest, so he was named after Yorgos, who's my papu. But my dad was very close with one of my grandfather's brothers, who was my great uncle Charlie. And Uncle Charlie was, it's interesting that I was named after him because Uncle Charlie had a business in Chinatown for a number of years, up until the early 80s. And we spent a lot of time in Chinatown because of that. So I was really, introduced to a lot of the cultural things and certainly the food. And so we spent a lot of time there as a very young child. So it's, now that I'm mayor, it's really interesting because of my relationship with the Chinese community and the relationship that my namesake, my great uncle Charlie, had with the Chinese community. So it's very fitting.
And because of COVID-19, everyone is having a hard time. So how about you and Braintree? And you recently announced that people can take off masks in public schools from March. So do you think it's time to say mission complete?
Well, I think that, obviously there are a number of people that have compromised immune systems, and having lived through this pandemic, at one point I actually did in June of 2020, I had COVID, so I understand, and I wasn't hospitalized, but I was pretty sick. So I truly respect and understand what the virus can do to individuals, and I don't think that I think we are in a much better place, and I think that because of vaccination and our vaccination rates, I think that we are in a good position to move forward, but obviously with caution. And if folks still want to wear masks, I think they should. I think that everybody has the right to do what they want, and I think that at this point, for folks that are concerned about not having the ability to fight viruses, et cetera, that they're a vulnerable group, and I respect that. But I will say that from the beginning, we followed the science. We made I had to make tough decisions on my own as mayor to get us through the early days. And then the state government got more involved and created rules that we had already created, and we abided by them. And I think that everybody came together. We had a slogan, and it was coming together by staying apart, so that everyone had the ability to come together at some point by getting through the toughest days of COVID. what I realized from all the information that I saw firsthand as it occurred was that a number of our elderly folks were mostly greatly affected by it. And we saw a lot of folks that were immunocompromised that also perished because of this deadly virus. So, you know, we did everything we could to help protect different groups that were vulnerable to, you know, to death. And when the state, after we got through one of the first waves in the state, recognized that there were a number of nursing homes. That was one of the biggest areas of infection and areas of death. And what I did is I did an executive order because we were under an emergency at the time. So I created an executive order, and I got a little pushback from the nursing home associations. But after seeing everything that had happened, we forced them to continue to test on a weekly basis instead of every 2 weeks. And they did, and we caught a number of cases which could have been deadly. So there were many things that we did to try to help folks. We had food drives every week right here at Town Hall. We saw our community come together. You know, it was absolutely amazing how everybody came together. And it's one thing to say you have a great community and everyone is wonderful. It's another thing to actually see it firsthand. Every Saturday we did that, and it really worked out well. And I really thank the folks that made it happen. So, and that's our residents.
Braintree has many neighboring towns such as Quincy, Weymouth, and how do you manage those neighborhood relationships? For example, you paid a lot of attention to the Weymouth Compressor Station, and you are in a Town board for water cooperation. So how do you manage it?
Well, I mean, first of all, as far as our relationship with Quincy and Weymouth, we have a great relationship with the two communities. I have a very good relationship with the mayors that serve those communities. I think they do a great job. So we do have a very good collaboration, and there will be times when we pick up the phone and have a conversation about an issue that comes up that kind of crosses over between our communities. We had a major outbreak of COVID that was part of a business that was in Weymouth, but there were a number of children from Braintree that were part of it. So the mayor and I worked together to help facilitate making sure that that spread didn't occur anymore. As far as the compressor station, we continue to fight it, and we will continue to fight it. And it's been a number of years. I mean, it started when I was a counselor, and we started by putting together a letter, basically stating our opposition to it. It's dangerous. It's something that we are concerned about. But some of the things that we're doing here in Braintree is we're working with some of the groups like FRAX to basically put together some air quality monitoring devices that will help pay for it. So as far as Tri-Town goes, we are about to finalize the agreement in which will allow us to build a new treatment plant. So this treatment plant, which will be located in Braintree, will provide water for Randolph, Holbrook, and Braintree. We've been in a legislative act which allowed us to work together since the 1800s, and this is taking it to the next level where we're going to have some cost savings by coming together and building a treatment plant. So this is wonderful news. It will be state-of-the-art. Our treatment plants on both sides of the pond are from the early 1900s, and they need to be replaced. So there's a great collaboration with Brian Howard, who's the town manager over in Randolph, and as well Greg Handley, who is the administrator in Holbrook. So we've had some great meetings, and one of the commissioners is Mr. Alexopoulos, who is a wonderful man, who's a counselor over in I think he's a council president in Randolph, and he's just been wonderful to work with. So that collaboration is great, and what it's going to do, it's going to benefit every resident in business in our three communities with clean drinking water.
So what do you think is the best solution if we replace the compressor station? You mean just clean?
Well, I think the issue is that I don't know how it would happen to shut it down, but the reality of it is it's in the wrong location. It's this the population of individuals and residents that are affected by it. If there was ever any type of explosion, would be devastating. It would be many lives lost. And in addition to that, they've already had a number of accidents that they've had there where there's been accidental release of natural gas, which, these things shouldn't happen. And, all the promises that were made, well, many of these promises aren't. We have in-house legal counsel that has participated in this fight and will continue to do so. Overall, when you have a populated area like that, like we have, it's really not the place to be putting such a dangerous thing.
You are achieving your term, like the fight.
It's it's an uphill battle. It's built and it's running, so that makes it kind of difficult. But we're going to keep fighting. So.
I think that's all my questions, and you can, if you want to say anything to the audience of BARTV, and you can just speak to the camera here, and
Sure.
Maybe they come from different countries, maybe not just Asian community, maybe they come from just the American community. So you can say anything you want to the camera.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone out there for watching, and just let them know that Braintree is a welcoming community. And my office is always available for any questions, comments. We're here for you. I'm here for you. And I'm here to represent each and every resident of our town. And I think that if you have any questions ever, you can call my office. And I'll tell you my main number into my office is 781-794-8100. And I have a number of staff members that are there to assist. And I'm always willing to meet with any resident who has any questions. We want to help create and continue to build our diversity. And we want everyone to have the ability to succeed here in Braintree. So that's my commitment to you. And once again, I thank you for taking the time to listen. Thank you.